All right, hi everybody. I'm going to go to the roster and see who's with us today. Is Mike with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Audra.
Hello.
Hello, Audra. Oh yeah, okay. Sunny.
Present.
Is.
Here.
Sid.
Hello.
Hi. Anna, I see you in your apartment there. Lydia.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Victoria.
Here.
Izzy.
Here.
All right. Cameron. John.
I'm here.
Kieran.
Yes.
Rowena.
Here.
Nora.
Nora is staying with me. We're like together, so
Okay. And Henry is here. How about Samantha?
Hello.
Oh, hi. Echo. Lauren.
Here.
Hey, Lauren. Vivian. Lan is here. I see you with Nora.
yeah.
How about Robert?
Yeah.
Here.
Robert's here. Cool. Otto. Otto.
Here.
Hi, Otto. And William.
Here.
In the future, guys, if you are late logging in after I've taken roll, just let me know, and I'll mark you present. Okay. Oh, Cameron's here. Cool. Thank you. So, couple things before we dive in here. First of all, I wanted to just see how it's going. A general check-in. Everybody okay? Anybody want to comment on how this class is going online so far? Are you okay with the I don't know, my use of technology? Any big problems? Oh boy, all these thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, I'll take that as an okay. Any issues with the reading responses? I think I emailed you last week after I looked at the first batch. They were really good. I was really pleased. In a couple places where I felt comments were necessary, I gave them. I used Canvas. Canvas has an option for me to give comments. I'll be honest with you, I haven't checked with the student view, so I don't know how that shows for you all, but I would like you, to check in on your reading responses if there are some comments I left for you. Take a look at those. If you're not able to see the comments, then let me know, okay? Audra says, seems pretty good. Homework easy to comprehend, seems a good amount for class. All right, I will take that for now. If that changes, Audra and everybody, let me know, okay? We're all doing this. This is a big experiment in a way, so let me know. I need to know, and I know you guys are under special stress here, so I want to make sure this is manageable. Okay. I'm going to do a couple things here before we dive in, okay? Sharing the screen. Boom. First of all, I have to brag about this. Not brag, I need you to be there. Constitution Day is this Thursday, September 17th. That's actually a big day at Micah. We've been having a symposium at this college for 17 years now in honor of Constitution Day, which is a day dedicated to talking about our constitutional rights. We've had some great lineups in the past in Falvey Hall. This year it will be online, and the discussion will be Justice in the Vote, Black Politics and the Transformation of American Democracy, and it's going to be online on Zoom, 6:30 p.m. this Thursday. So put it on while you're cooking your dinner and listen. And if you have any questions, there's a Q&A option for you to submit. You have to register, but it is free. And this is our lineup. These are our speakers. I am actually in charge of this program, and so I invited these speakers. And now I have nothing left to do with it. I will not be moderating it, but I'm very excited to hear how this conversation goes, and I urge you to take part and be there. Okay? Again, it is free, 6:30 to about 8 p.m. on Thursday. So, check in while you're making dinner, sitting down to dinner, or whatever, hanging out with some friends. And on an added note, by the way, if you have not already registered to vote and you are out of state and you need assistance with doing out-of-state voting, you can get in touch with me. But Micah has an excellent program that was started by a former student of mine a few years ago that helps Micah students register to vote. So get in touch with me. I will find the link for that and I will circulate it to the class because it is crucially important that you vote. I don't know if you probably don't know this, but there was a group that studied Micah's voter participation last year. Nationally speaking, Micah was one of the best schools in the entire country in terms of students voting. So I want to keep up that tradition, okay? All right. Let me switch over here. I'm going to look at this is our schedule now. Last week we dealt with the apology and credo. You put your responses here, and I recorded the class right here if you wanted to see it again. This is where we are today, the Gorgias. You did your reading responses for that. After class, I'm going to record this. I'm going to put it up there. I'm recording it right now. And then next week, there's your reading responses for the Gorgias Part 2, okay? The week after that, your first papers are due. I am going to go over those next week because we actually kind of have a pretty full agenda today. So they're there for you to look at. Feel free to dive in at any point. If you have any questions, you can email me. I will go over them specifically in class next week, if that's okay. All right? All right. I'm going to pause for a second, see if anybody has any questions or issues with anything going on Canvas here.
Should we get started on like writing our papers now, or is it okay to wait until next week?
I recommend the sooner the better. As soon as you like. I give these to you plenty of time in advance. If we were meeting in class, I typically give the topics 2 weeks in advance, so you have plenty of time. You are, and on that note, Lydia, thank you. You are welcome to email me questions or set up a time to talk, okay? And if you have an outline you want to go over with me, that's fine as well. Rough drafts, you'd have to get them to me pretty soon, okay? The other thing I wanted to tell you is that the writing studio is up and running and working tutorials remotely. And so that is a service that you should use. I'll give you more details on that next week. Any other questions? Any other questions so far? All right, good. So I mentioned that we had a little bit of a packed agenda today. We have two things we need to really go over. First of all, we did not get to the credo last week, so I need to talk about the credo, which is a short dialogue that is typically paired with the apology because sequentially it comes after the events of the apology. And then, of course, we have to dive into the Gorgias, which was your reading for today. By the way, notice the way I pronounce it, Gorgias, not Gorgias. I'm not a Greek scholar. I just know that's how it's pronounced. So, any case, and I imagine that the Gorgias you probably found a little bit challenging, which is perfectly the way it's supposed to be. So we'll talk about that. We need to unpack that. The Gorgias, we're going to be spending 2 weeks on it, though. So I imagine that, I imagine that we'll, whatever we don't get to today, we'll tackle for next week. The other thing I wanted to say is just touching on the paper topics for the first paper. Those topics I've come up with a couple of options. They all pertain to the readings you will have done. You will have done in 2 weeks. That means the Apology, Credo, and the Gorgias. So Yeah, that's all I need to say about that. Okay. So let's dive into the credo, and if possible, I'd like you to pull up that text. You have it. I gave it to you all digitally on Canvas. I'm gonna deal with the credo relatively quickly. I do think it's a really interesting little dialogue, and of course it follows the apology, and the point of the dialogue suggests that Plato may have intended it as a kind of addendum to the apology, or did he mean it as a kind of response? Did he mean it as something that would correct something else he saw in the apology? The apology is a pretty striking example of how Socrates does not fit in Athens. He, as we saw last week, he does all he can pretty much to rankle the people of Athens. He calls himself a gadfly, a horsefly. He embraces his mission and metaphor, and doesn't shrink from it. He doesn't try to be political. He doesn't try to soothe anybody's egos. And in his own defense, he does a terrible job of trying to defend himself. Because he doesn't defend himself, he ensures that he gets the penalty, that the worst penalty of all, or the most serious penalty of all, which he says is not a serious penalty, right? He's happy to die. He insults them plenty. So what we get in the apology is the image of a philosopher who does not fit in the city. He's kind of like an alien presence. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't care about wealth and honor. He walks around annoying people, irking them, and urging them to be, how should I put it? Maybe bad citizens too, right? Because he wants the young Athenians to care less about their honor and wealth. And an economy cannot run when people are not interested in their honor and wealth, right? So he's an upsetting presence to the polis. That's the point. Polis, by the way, you're going to hear me use this word a lot as especially we go into the Republic. By the way, I put it in the chat here. I'll be using the chat as the whiteboard. I think it's easiest. Polis means city or state. It is a polis for the Greeks. Basically means a political structure. It doesn't need to be an urban entity. It's just a political entity. And so the polis, I guess I could loosely, when I use that term, it's roughly referring to a state, a political state. And it is where we get the word political from. It comes from the Greek for polis. What was I talking about? The credo. So the credo is named after Crito. By the way, one other note. I mentioned to you that scholars are pretty sure that the Apology is the first work that Plato wrote. And what's interesting is that Plato writes all his dialogues kind of in reverse order. He starts with the very end. He starts with the end of Socrates' life, and then the Credo is next. And then there's another dialogue called the Phaedo, which is where he is actually, by the way, history tells us that Socrates, when he was put to death, he was given hemlock, which is a poisonous drink, and he was required to drink it, and he drank it. And that's how he ended his life. So Plato starts with those three, Apology, Credo, and the Phaedo, which we're not reading. And then from there, he starts over again from the beginning. And the Gorgias is a much later work of Plato's, but it's earlier, obviously, in the life of Socrates itself. Okay? So we get the Apology, which is his defense. He secures the death penalty. He lands himself in prison. The opening of the Credo, his friend Credo comes to see him. Again, this dialogue is named after Credo. It's named after the guy he's talking with. Credo comes to see him, and Credo wants to do what?
He wants him to flee.
He wants him to flee. He wants him to get out of there. Good. Why?
He thinks that if he could save
John, you need to put your volume up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear
All
me?
right.
He believes that if Socrates lives, he could share more of his knowledge to other people rather than
Good.
having it go to waste.
Awesome. He gives a couple reasons, so I'm gonna fill that out. Thank you, John. That's an excellent start. What else? What other reasons does he give? Why should Socrates flee?
He says he doesn't want Socrates to abandon his kids.
Yes. Good. What else? Anybody else?
Like he's afraid of someone's gonna tell other people that he what do you say that
He left his teacher behind because of money. Like he didn't want to pay for the money to rescue his teacher.
Right. Credo. He starts off with that argument. It's like, Socrates, what are people going to say about your friends? We didn't do anything to get you out. Good. Anything else?
I guess
I'll deal with
it's-
these.
Oops.
Oh, Sunny.
It's pretty much the reasoning behind the first reason, but he also argues on moral grounds that Socrates shouldn't just meekly submit to the punishment because, in truth, he didn't really do anything wrong.
Good. And if he submits to unjust punishment, what does that say about him?
Oops, sorry. Are you asking me, Furman?
Anybody at
Okay.
all.
Hmm.
How does it look if he submits to an unjust punishment?
Well,
Looks like-
first it does. Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
Well, it will make him look unjust. It looks like he actually committed these crimes and stuff like that.
Good. Sunny, were you going to say something else?
No, pretty much the same thing. It makes him look guilty, and also after all this talk about justice and all in this discussion and the previous discussions, it's gonna make him look like he doesn't actually care about enforcing justice.
There you go. Now we have it. So you put it very well, Sunny and Robert. It makes him look like he is, and Audra says makes him look guilty, but guilty of what? Specifically of siding with injustice. That's what Credo's point is. Credo's point is, you talk a big game about justice. What the fuck? What the hell? Come on. Kick some ass. Get out of here, right? And by the way, look what you're doing to your kids, right? That is pretty lame, if not unjust as well. So this is the essence of Credo's argument, by the way, and this comes up around 45D, okay? Just for your records. And this is a pretty serious charge, okay? So Socrates is going to have to deal with this. By the way, the first part's easy, about his friends being worried about their reputation. Socrates says, I don't know if you noticed, but I don't care about reputation, yours or mine. So forget that. The real charge is the injustice charge. So Socrates is going to have to stick to his guns and explain why he must submit to this judgment. What's his argument?
Since he essentially, he agreed that this was his punishment when he was, during the apology, he knew and agreed to the punishment of death. If he ran away, he would actually be breaking that agreement. So he would still be breaking the law and would be unjust, essentially.
Okay, Very nice.
I think too, also, this is where like Plato's talk of the social construct starts to come in,
Good.
as in like he agreed to like go through the correct channels and like talk to the judges and all that and go through all the proper channels, in that when he agreed to do that, he was willing to accept either fate, and that if he just decided, oh no, punishment doesn't apply to me, the law doesn't apply to me, then he'd be breaking the social construct in which he'd been living in for so long.
Excellent.
And I think too, if he were to leave, the people who did eventually side with him in his case would see him as more guilty, or kind of like they made the wrong choice in thinking he was in the right.
Good. Yeah. He does say that point towards the end, John. That's a great one.
He also mentions that he always had the chance to leave Athens if he doesn't believe in its political views and stuff, and that to leave now, it wouldn't really make sense, especially since he's 70 at this time.
Yeah. Good.
Isn't he also concerned with like the well-being of his sons? Or like if he flees and he brings his sons along with him, then he's gonna like they're gonna all be in danger.
Huh. And not only that, I don't know if you guys remember how he ended the apology, but what does he expect for his sons?
Regardless of whether or not he dies or flees, his friends are kind of expected to take care of them. So whether or not he flees or dies doesn't actually affect his sons very much at all.
Good. Good. Awesome. So Cameron uses the word social contract, which is a more modern term. Modern philosophers, that is, like Rousseau, Locke, and Hobbes, use that word. But the idea of a contract is there for sure. And I believe Lauren uses the word agreement. He talks about depending on your translation, he talks about a just agreement with the laws, capital L. And as you guys point out, right, he says, you know, I made this agreement. He sees himself as in a kind of contract with the laws of Athens. What have these laws done for him?
Can you elaborate on your question?
Well, he feels that he owes something to the laws of Athens, which is why he's going to submit. What does he see that these laws of Athens have done for him? What has the lawfulness of Athens done for him and his family?
He claims that's, oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You can go.
He claims that since his parents were wedded under the laws are the reason he is alive, able to be alive, things like that.
Great, John.
Yeah, I was gonna follow the same sort of idea that like he's benefited since he's like been born here, like, and his past generations. So if he didn't agree to these rules, he could have left at any point. And since he didn't, he has to abide by their rules. Yeah,
right. The nation has, you know, it's this country. Well, you know, there is something new here in Socrates. He's not talking about the homeland. He's not talking about the motherland or the fatherland. You know, he's not talking about the soil. This is not nationalism he's talking about. I'm not even sure if it's patriotism. It's very ahead of his times. I don't know if are any of you guys familiar with Antigone by Sophocles? This is a play you all should read, and I probably should have included it here. But Antigone is written around the same time, and it's about a woman whose brother is killed, but he is persona non grata in the city, and they leave his body out to be eaten by the animals. And she wants to bury that body. And so it's about conflict between family law and city law. And we're getting something similar here as well. Like Plato is asserting the ascendancy of civil laws over everything else, right? Why should he stay in Athens? Not because his family is from there, not because that's his homeland where his parents and grandparents are from, not because the people all look like him, right? Or speak the same language as him, or, you know, the language of nationalism. No, it's because of what these laws have done for him and his family and the kind of order that they have given. And it's a kind of order, overarching order that they have enabled. Sure, Lauren puts out this idea. Yeah, the laws married his parents. So what? What that really means is it is the superstructure in which his family was able to live in peace, right? And prosperity. And then he had his family and they were educated. You don't have education if you don't have law, and you don't have commerce without law, right? So thanks to the superstructure of the laws, he's able to do everything he can. And Plato suggests that there is great danger if he violates that. He says at 50b, Socrates says to Crito, do you think it possible for a city not to be destroyed if the verdicts of its courts have no force, but are nullified and set at naught by private individuals, right? What does that mean for the lawfulness of this city if private individuals can defy those verdicts, right? And then he goes on the next page, 51b, he says, is your wisdom such as not to realize that your country is to be honored more than your mother, your father, and all your ancestors, that it is to be more to be revered and more sacred, that it counts for more among the gods and sensible men, that you must worship to it, yet yield to it and placate its anger more than your fathers. This is, again, this is similar to the turning point I was talking about with Sophocles' Antigone. In ancient Greek society at this point, we're seeing a transition from the ascendancy of the familial law to the ascendancy of the city law, of political law, right? And that's essentially what Socrates is saying here, or Plato, I should say, is saying through the voice of Socrates, right? You must honor this city more than your parents. You owe it more than your parents itself, okay? And it doesn't matter that it was that in this moment it was, you know, it was meted out by a corrupt human being named the Miletus. It is the institution itself that you must work to save. That's more important. Okay.
I think like also at this time, right? I mean, looking at it today, like civilization or the idea of like a civilization is kind of a guarantee, but at the time, right? Like the idea of having like such an advanced city like Athens, I mean, like in like a Eurocentric like view, like Athens was like very advanced for the time, right? And like the fact that he got to live in that area and like in Athens and like talk to all these Athenians too, right? Like they had to uphold that, like, because the city was kind of precious in a way.
Well, it's not only precious, but also cosmopolitan. I'm going to take that word here in the chat because cosmopolitan means something special. Cosmos is the universe. Polis is the city. It means when you say that a city is cosmopolitan, it means that it is a city of the universe. It's like a microcosm of the universe. New York City is cosmopolitan. Why is it cosmopolitan? Because there are people in that city from all over the world. And it's a fancy way of saying it's a city of immigrants. Athens, being a trading hub in the Eastern Mediterranean, was cosmopolitan. It was a city of immigrants. So any kind of patriotism you have is going to have to transcend, tribal bonds. It is the very beginnings of talking of the nation state, of a universal nation state, right? All the other political entities in the Eastern Mediterranean at this time are talking in terms of tribal unity, and like genealogy. Like they are related in a way. But Athens has to transcend that. It has no other way. So Plato is forcefully asserting that point by saying that you owe allegiance to the laws. You don't owe allegiance to your family or to the will of specific Athenians. They're going to be wrong at times. It's the law itself you have to work to preserve. And sometimes you have to suck it up and suffer those judgments to preserve the law. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, Socrates' claim of what the Athens had done for him, is that like the similar thought that some philosophers had, like, the country or a nation and the law sort of approves your existence, and if you don't have like an official birth certificate, your identity is sort of non-existent? Is that
Well, I don't know who you're referring to. The point is rather that the lawfulness of the city enables the kind of, cultural liberty and moral liberty that Socrates thinks is important about Athens, right? There is no education, there is no higher commerce without, there is little talk of justice, debate over right and wrong without the laws and without this greater lawfulness. That's more of the point.
Thank you.
For those of you who read Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail, it's actually a similar argument where Martin Luther King is arguing that, he distinguishes between mortal laws and divine laws or eternal laws. And mortal laws, they can be corrupt, but that should not undermine, we should not allow this to undermine lawfulness as such, right? And Martin Luther King goes on to argue for nonviolence as a way of questioning human laws, but leaving the law, capital L, intact and respected, right? Sonny says, people would be furious if we had to abide by Socrates' reasoning. Why would people be upset by this?
I feel like Socrates' reasoning works when you come from a place of privilege and the society and the government is like supporting you and it is giving you things, but there's so many people and demographics for which the government just kind of completely undermines it and like actually limits your opportunities and abilities. So I think that that's where that reasoning gets like tricky.
That's a great point, Anna.
It's also like we saw in the Gorgias, there's a lot of talk of like within Athens itself, like Athenians literally saying, well, if you're a slave, that's where you're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And like, so there's a whole that's like a whole group of people within Athens and Greece in general that's not really talked about in this. So
that's right. Excellent point. By the way, guys, if we're good to do this in a more efficient fashion, click on the go to participants and click on the raise your hand option. Then I can see who's coming in turn. But there are some other comments. Who wants to weigh in here? Lydia, go for it.
There's also like a part in Gorgias where like it's what Socrates and Gorgias and the other guy, I forget, but the other guy's like
Polus.
He's like, how could you be, like happier if you get punished, dude? Like it's cool when you do crime and you get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like less of a like moral and like kind of societal reason and just kind of like, oh, it's common sense. You did something bad and you got away with it, so now you're happy. But Socrates is like, no, that's not how that works.
Good.
When you're punished, you're happy.
Actually, Lydia, that raises a very good counterpoint to what happened in the Apology, right? We could ask ourselves, when we get there in the Gorgias, was Socrates better for his judgment, right, that he brought on himself? Cameron.
I was just gonna go back like to what Anna said, like we were talking about this. I think like in a lot of Plato's writings, right, like especially in the Republic, I've already read it. He kind of, a lot of his work takes place inside of a bubble. A lot of his ideas take place inside of like the context of in a perfect situation, mm-hmm. This is what would work, And so like I think reading Gorgias, it was definitely a lot different thinking about like, because like a lot of what he was saying, like what Anna was saying too, like there are people who like the government just does not work for, and they do not get like the advantage of having like a very fair trial or a speedy trial or anything like that. So I think like in a perfect world, you know, like because I know like in the Republic, like he works in the context of like a utopia a lot, and so like it's important to like remember that too, you know, like a lot of his works are just very in the perfect situation.
Good. Well, I will caution you, Cameron, that's if you think he really is a utopian, but we'll get there. There's plenty of reason to doubt that. But you raise a good point. I mean, as Lauren pointed out, you know, there's a third to half the population of Athens for whom the laws were not constructed at all. And what do you do in a modern state or any other state, you know, when the laws seem to have been built to oppress? You know, in a way, Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail is a much more sophisticated approach, you know, response to this very paradigm, because Martin Luther King is dealing with laws that were designed to oppress the African Americans. And he wants to change that he wants to change those laws without changing what we call rule of law, right, itself. Yeah, I think that's all very good. Sunny, you started the ball rolling here. Did you want to say something to your little provocative point? Or why you thought about it?
Yeah, it's just because right now, most of us and pretty much in general, America, we value individualism over the nation from what I see. But it's not just a blind belief that the individual is, you know, takes priority over the state, that it's not just minority, you know, it's not just simply because minority opinions have to be heard. It's because we know that individuals comprise the state, and without the individual, the nation can't stand. And if the nation continues to oppress individuals this way, then the nation and both the individual cannot stand.
Awesome. That's great. Anybody else? Yeah, Cameron, go for it.
I would say that that mindset too is like, I would argue, this is getting a little off topic, but this is like why we're in the state that we are in currently, is because America shoves the idea of the individual down our throat so much, like the idea of the American dream. It's why people can't put on a fucking mask, is because people think that their individual opinion is what's correct. And I think that, well, individuality is, you know, I'm not discrediting that, but it's the idea of like a conservative versus a Democrat, like the idea of if we can do something to sacrifice a little bit of ourselves for the better of the whole, you know. I think that's why we're in the situation that we're in, is because individuals are not taking certain accountability, and in which would advantage everybody.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I think American individualism certainly runs afoul of what Socrates is talking about here. Socrates is really talking about submitting his own interests in his own will and even his own life, even for dubious circumstances, just to uphold the integrity of the whole, right? And that is a very big sacrifice that individuals, you know, that does not seem to be possible in any state that's very individualistic like our own. At this point, you know, when I talk about credo, I typically ask this of students. You know, Socrates is willing to do anything for this state, and in many states ask sacrifices of their citizens as well. One of those sacrifices is to go to war. I think we can all agree Socrates would be willing. And as you will find out later, he did serve. He was actually, according to Plato, at least he was pretty brave, believe it or not, fighting the Persians. I think it really brings home, it will really bring home the power of Socrates' claim if I said to you, if I asked you, would you be willing to go to war for your nation? I'm not going to say homeland because he doesn't like that word, but would you be willing to go to war? Now, I know the answer because I've been teaching art students for 20 years. I know what you're all going to say. You're going to say, I'm in fucking art school. Why would you ask me such a question? But maybe the better question would be, what would it take to get you to enlist? What a stupid question. Is that not the stupidest question you ever heard? I ask stupid questions. I'm like Socrates. I ask stupid questions sometimes. What would it take for you to enlist? Robert lit up.
A nation that actually cared about its inhabitants.
So it has to demonstrate that it cares about its inhabitants.
You need to care for your minorities. There are so many things that need to happen before I would willingly go to war for this stupid country.
Good. Samantha, you had your hand up. Samantha?
A while ago, actually, before like I applied to Micah, I was debating like enlisting because they pay for school. That was the only like driving force behind that. But
Of course.
yeah, pay my debts. That's my reason.
Okay. If they're willing to pay your debts, you'll serve. Cameron?
I have a lot of feelings about this. I think, yeah, like in an idea, I would if America was worth fighting for.
Whoa.
You know?
Oh my God.
It's not at all right now. Not even a little bit. Don't get me wrong. Right now, like Athens say, like an ideal society, like it would make sense because I'd have to sacrifice my life for what I believe in, you know? But do I believe in America right now? Like not even a little bit. And like the idea too about like, it makes me like sick right now when people are like, our troops right now are going and fighting for our freedom. And in reality, they're pillaging the living shit out of the Middle East for oil, you know? Like they're not defending our freedom. They're not defending it from everybody. They're just exploiting third world countries for their natural resources for the betterment of our world, which is not what I believe in by any means. And also the fact that like, it's not the same idea that like rich men don't serve, rich men aren't cops, you know? They keep the cost of college so high so that way they have people to enlist. So like what Sam said, like they pay for your college tuition so that way they get kids to keep joining so they don't have to have a draft, which is absolutely insane to me.
Anybody else? Samantha, your hand's still up. Did you want to say some more?
No, I just didn't know that I had to lower my hand. I'm sorry.
No worries. Lauren?
I think it would also kind of come down to how much danger are people actually here in? Like, for instance, like, there's definitely the case of like, do I think the cause itself is like, just like, who are you fighting against and things like that, but also just like, are you or are you not in danger of being like invaded otherwise? Like, are your family members or just like fellow citizens in danger? Then yeah, probably. But it's been so long since that's been like really in the forefront of war, at least for like me personally. Like it's always been a very distant thing.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but Canada is massing troops at the border. Did you know that? So I think I'm joking. Canada's not invading. Canada's not invading. Sorry. Right. Okay, so Lord raises a good example. When your family is endangered from an invading force, not likely around here. Well, I have a question for everybody. Robert points out, you know, I'll fight for the regime when it demonstrates that it cares about all its people. Michael points out, I need to see healthcare and educational financing first. Throughout history, do regimes get to poll their citizens before they go to war? Do citizens have a chance to chime in and say, yeah, even in this democracy, right? They don't, right? They don't. So I don't know what that means, but it doesn't go. I guess my point is it never goes down like this, right? So is there something going on in this country? Are we reaching a point of no return where people just are not willing? And maybe there are some international students here who would like chime in and say, you Americans are crazy, I'll fight for my nation, and I'll tell you why. If we have any Korean students here, they have to serve, I believe.
If you're male.
If you're male.
I think at some point, the citizens would reach a stage where you don't have a choice but to attend the war and fight for the country because your sovereignty is taken away from you and you're just not even part of a nation that functions to protect you anymore. And at one point you'll just have to fight for a government that would protect your freedom. And for example, if you become a colony, then the sovereignty is just almost eliminated starting from a certain point, and then you don't have a regime that represents you or protects you. So I think that's like a stage where you don't even have a choice but to fight for your country, whether you agree to the agenda of the war or not.
Awesome. Thank you. Lauren.
This is kind of building on that, and it's not as related. It's a bit of a tangent, but just like a lot of like, particularly I think it was African colonies, like during things like World War I and World War II, had soldiers who joined sort of in the anticipation that they would have some sort of payoff and have a lot more respect, where like they weren't getting any. And the thought was, if I fight for what is considered to be, freedom, things like that, then maybe that will mean that we are given something like that. And it didn't happen. But
I think that I've heard similar arguments from African American soldiers who went off in World War II and in Vietnam, demanding that, they were hopeful that when they came back, then they would, through their example, that they would, and experience and sacrifice, that they would urge civil equality upon the American laws, and they did not in many cases. It was, very sad story, very hard. Izzy.
I was going to go back to what you were saying about kind of like the contract between citizens with their country, where they're kind of expected as a result of living there or being born there to serve. And I think it's interesting. Like I have 3 younger sisters who are disabled.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we wanted to immigrate to another country, it's a lot more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we're trapped in like America, regardless of where we want to live. If there were like a hypothetical perfect nation,
mm-hmm.
Like we can't go to Canada where there's healthcare because we cost too much, right? So it's interesting to think about how we owe something to the land we're born on, whether we can give it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point, Izzy. Wow. I really like that. Yeah. And, it's not so easy to say, well, things aren't working out here, right? I'll pick another place to live. It's not like that. It's not like a homeland is not like a neighborhood, right? You move in, you're like, oh, well, the view's nice, but the neighbors are loud, right? Guess I'll move to Canada, or I'll move to Mexico. Plato completely ignores, I think, the unavoidable truth of homeland, right? I struggle with this very much. I'm born here, but my family is from Ireland and Belgium, and my wife's family is from Syria, and we all have Irish citizenship, because if your grandparents were in Ireland, you get Irish citizenship. So that's a hint to anybody out there, Irish. You could bail if you want to. And I said to my wife the other day, I said, if this election doesn't turn out well, maybe we should move to Ireland. And I don't know if we, yeah, they have health care, and I like what they're doing over there with their laws. But I don't know. It's the culture that you would miss. And it's not so easy. You can uproot yourself.
I think, sorry, I didn't raise
No,
my
go
hand.
for it.
I've also been talking a lot about that, like what's going to happen in November and like what will happen. And then the idea of the homeland, like I don't really know if I have a particular attachment to America because I didn't choose to be here. I was born here, like I was born in California. Like it's just like,
there you go.
I didn't choose there. And like now the idea of the homeland is becoming questioned because like my family and I, we actually have an escape plan of like if we need to flee the country in November because like I don't know what the hell is going to happen. Like my dad was born in Mexico, my mom is from the Netherlands, and like I don't know what's going to happen to their legal status, And so we have like a plan in case we do need to leave. And now I don't know what is my homeland, like I have attachments to like places in Europe, attachments to here, but like I didn't choose to live here. And so far America has done almost nothing for me in the fact that makes me want to stay.
Mm. Oh, Rowena. Thank you. That was awesome, Cameron. Rowena, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say because as a Chinese, we are kind of more rooted to the land because as soon as like you want to immigrant to another country and you'll lose your nationality in China and you can't go back like for more than I think it's like 2 months. So like we kind of really just rooted here because we can't really leave here where you've lived like for like 20 years and just say I'm not gonna go back here. And like
you mean
China, like
you mean
we
if you leave the country? You're talking about if you leave the country?
Yeah, like just immigrant somewhere maybe we want. So like it's very different from where the United States stands. Like, yeah.
Good, thank you, Rowena. Yeah, I mean, United States is more recently an immigrant nation, and we have very high mobility in America as well. Americans move on average every 7 years, so we don't have the same degree of rootedness for sure. But I see everybody typing F in the chat. I will assume that means what I think it means, unless anybody tells me otherwise. Still learning the lingo. So let's see here. I might say, thinking about recent politics and history, the homeland, ideas of the homeland and nationality, like blood, attachment. This is a more powerful motivation for going to war than this idea of a contract, right? Well, let's see, I'll march off to war. Mr. Trump, you want to go to war with, I don't know, Iran. What's your charge? I see. Okay. Let's see. What have you done for me? What has this country done for me? That checklist. This is a kind of improbable line of thinking. And it's also a very poor motivator. And I think a much more reliable motivator is my homeland is in danger or our national pride is in danger, right? And Plato does not opt to pull that card. Could he have? I don't know. But he didn't. So, I don't know. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments here? Good. So the credo, as you see, the credo is a meditation upon patriotism and what it means to be a citizen, and what is expected or demanded of citizens. And to say that a citizen owes more to the laws than to his family, that is crazy talk. I might just point out that it is that when I hear him say that you owe more to the laws than you do to your parents, that is echoed directly in the gospel when Jesus says that you owe more to God than your parents, right? It's the same scandalous statement that would have really, offended people in this part of the world at this time. It's the same kind of revolutionary notion. So Socrates, says, look, you think, Crito, you think it is unjust for me to suffer this unjust sentence, but I would do much worse. I would do much greater harm if I were to run away. And I would undermine the laws of Athens itself. And then you raise the issue of my children. Well, I already said it earlier. I don't want my children raised anywhere else. And he doesn't say this for nationalistic reasons, right? They have to be Athenian. No, he says because Athens has laws. So there's his rebuttal. I would point out, and I think this was part of one of the essay questions I asked you all. I would point out, it's important to think about his motivations here. Why is this the follow-up to the Apology? How does Socrates in the Credo compare to Socrates in the Apology? Why does Plato feel the need to write this dialogue after what he's done? There's a hand. Audra.
Hi. I mean, I feel like it could kind of be like you said, like an addendum. I don't know. Where it's like, yeah, where it's he's kind of, in the Apology, he's just kind of sitting up there on the witness stand, just spewing all this stuff to make everybody hate him and to make himself get the death penalty. Like, oh, you guys don't care about real laws. You guys only care about yourself or your wealth. You don't really care about the children, etc., etc. And so then Crito is kind of more so being like, well, yes, the individuals are bad, but overall the city-state of Athens is still, quote-unquote, a good place, or, a better place than other places, which I think is maybe a little bit relatable in America today. But it's Socrates here is different because he's not necessarily arguing for his life against a bunch of people who hate him. He's arguing to a friend, or like on behalf of his friend, and kind of saying like, yes, this is my reasoning, this is why I'm going through with it, without necessarily trying to make an enemy of literally everybody in the courtroom.
Right. Which he kind of did. But good point. Those are great points, Audrey. You made me think of these questions I put in the chat. Plato sees something redeemable in Athens. It's worth thinking about what he thinks is redeemable. And many of you are relating it to the current state of the United States, or you could think about this in the case of your homeland, whatever it is. Is there anything, what is redeemable in your homeland, in your state, that is worth building, devotion to? By the way, there were many nice comments. I didn't get to touch on them all. If anytime I miss a comment, please feel free to, that you think, you know, everybody should pay attention to, please call my attention to it. Okay. Great. Any other questions or comments at this point about the Credo? All right. I'm going to turn to Gorgias because in the interest of time, we have to move here. We have about till 2:30 today, so I'm going to go as far in the Gorgias as I can. We have next week, and then I realized actually the week after that your papers are due. You don't have a reading assignment, so we have plenty of time to just talk about the Gorgias some more. So we have plenty of time to take on the Gorgias. This is one of his longer dialogues. Let me see. Let me see if I get any. Take a general temperature. How did you all feel about? Anybody want to give me their sense of how reading Gorgias was? Was this, how did this compare to the Apology? How was this compared to last week's reading? Harder, easier, funner?
It was.
For me,
sorry, I didn't raise.
I feel for me, I think this was a bit easier to read. Like it's like a dialogue, so it's easier to I guess visualize what's happening, seeing how everyone's reacting to each other and stuff. I thought it was really amusing.
Wow. Okay. Anybody else?
I agree. I also found this one easier.
Sid. Thank you, Robert. Sid.
Yeah, I feel like it was just a lot. I feel like it was a more casual reading. I don't know if I would say it's easier or harder, just different, because there's not like an entire jury deciding someone's life, basically.
Awesome. Lauren.
It's sort of like, whereas on the Apology and really on the Credo as well, like Socrates is going on much longer explanations that don't have a lot of back and forth. And like when he's talking with Credo, he's talking with someone who generally understands like kind of how he thinks. With this, he really breaks it down for a lot of people, which was a lot easier for me to read at least. And then the fact that it was more like a scene at times also helped.
Awesome. Well, I am shocked. I think this one is, I think this is a really hard dialogue. I taught this last year and I literally had like a headache after teaching it, because what you get here is you get some pretty classic examples of Socrates just spinning a web around, in particular his exchange with Polus. Otto.
Yes, I just noticed a very interesting thing because in the articles that we read before this week, like the Apology, he was like trying to give this impression that he's very doesn't know anything, but in this Gorgias, he's like very confidently trying to persuade someone and like to teach. That's like difference that I noticed.
Good. Yeah. I told you, thank you, Otto, early on that, you know, Plato writes for 60 years. And so if you have a main character for 60 years, aka Socrates, that's going to change. The voice will change over time. And the Apology, we all agree, scholars agree. I'm not part of that really, but they agreed that this is the original Socrates. That's his voice we're hearing here. And Otto is right. And Socrates, he says, remember, I'm not wise. My wisdom is I'm the only one who doesn't know. And we were debating last week whether he is the humblest person or not, you know, but he takes on a stance of not knowing. And suddenly here in this dialogue, which is much later in Plato's work, he knows plenty. So that's very good. Don't forget also he's taking on us, you know, there's a lot of, this is something you need to get used to. Plato uses irony. So in the voice of Socrates, Socrates is often ironic. And for all intents and purposes here, the Gorgias, this is his great critique of rhetoric, of the rhetoricians, of the great speakers, the orators. if you just look at this dialogue to see who gives the biggest speeches, it's Socrates, right? So again, irony there too. As I was saying earlier, I think this is really hard, this dialogue, because there are certain passages where he just goes back and forth with Polus in particular, where he spins him around. And you get that exchange with Polus is also excellent because it's a great example of where Socrates, spins Polus around to contradict himself. And of course, that's very maddening for Polus. This is another example of how Socrates would have really upset the people he spoke with, his interlocutors. And Polus is kind of like speechless at the end, like, how the hell did I land at this conclusion? That's not what I was saying, right? You also get at certain points people saying to Socrates, what you're saying is not merely wrong, it is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Socrates' contentions are ridiculous. Actually, for next week, you're going to read about the second part of the dialogue is when another bystander by the name of Callicles attacks him. And Callicles attacks him in even more outlandish fashion. And he, again, the claiming that Socrates' position is counterintuitive and ridiculous and outrageous, right? These are recurring themes. Let me dive in here and see how far we get. It's named Gorgias because it is largely, or it starts off as a dialogue with Gorgias himself, who is one of the great orators, and the term that's used, I believe, in your translation is rhetoricians. I put it in the chat. What are they? They are teachers of rhetoric or oratory, the art of speech. We talked about this last week. These are the sophists. That's another word for them, AKA. And the sophists, we have rhetoricians, all modern societies, all societies have always had rhetoricians, always. These are the people who are accomplished in the art of speech. They are accomplished, and then they transmit that art to others, and typically those who lead or rule. So why is he zeroing in on these people? He's zeroing in on these people because they are very influential and powerful, okay? That's why Socrates is going after them. So the Gorgias, and by the way, all of the people that are his speakers in this dialogue, these were not fictional people. These were real people that Plato and Socrates knew, and Gorgias himself was very well known, at least in the city of Athens. So it opens up, we open up with a great example of Socratic irony, where Socrates comes along, he sees these guys hanging out. I think they'd had some kind of party. And he says, and Socrates announces that he wants to talk to Gorgias, who is revered. And the guys say, what do you want to ask him? And he says, I want to ask Gorgias who he is. And everybody is laughing like, oh my God, this guy, this asshole. Socrates is back at it again. What the hell kind of question is this? And this becomes much more specific into saying, Gorgias, I actually want to know, or he says to the men, I want to know what craft Gorgias is expert in. And Polus says that Gorgias partakes in one of the noblest acts, and that's rhetoric, right? So before they even start to define anything, they all agree, oh, well, it is the noblest. It's the noblest of all, right? He presses Gorgias. He wants to ask specifically, Gorgias, I want you to tell me, I want you to define for me what rhetoric is. Gorgias opens up pretty generally. It deals in words. Socrates says, bullshit. That doesn't tell me much. Tell me more. Okay. Gorgias says it makes people able to speak. About what? Right? What is the subject matter of the words employed by rhetoric? That's what Socrates asks. And then Gorgias says, the greatest and noblest of human affairs. So back in circles, right? Socrates asks at that point, he says, what does rhetoric produce? What does rhetoric have to offer, right? Trying to get something concrete out of Gorgias. What does rhetoric have to offer? And Gorgias famously answers, this is 452D, if you have your text with you. He says, rhetoric brings freedom to humankind and to each dominion over others. Rhetoric brings freedom to humankind, brings freedom, and gives people dominion over others. I want to dwell on that for a second. What does he mean? How does rhetoric give freedom and dominion? What does that tell us about rhetoric?
I know.
Oh, sorry, Cameron. I saw Cameron's hand. Then Robert, you're next.
Go for it.
No. Oh, well, I don't know who was first. So, Robert, you want to go? He's deferring to you.
Okay. I said rhetoric has a duality and that it can be used for both good and bad.
Good.
Enhance others' points and like create like an argument and stuff like that, but you can also use it to silence others. Stuff like
Nice. Cameron.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, in that sense, I think he's referring to like it allows people's voices to be heard and like heard effectively. And
Good. And then, sorry, I got excited. Cameron, go ahead. I cut you off.
Oh no, that was it.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Right. It liberates. How does it give dominion over others?
Well, much in the way that Socrates is able to twist the other's words, a rhetorician would be able to.
Nice. Audra?
I was just gonna say it's kind of like the art of persuasion. So you can kind of persuade people that your way is right, or that you know what's best, or that they should go along with what you're thinking. So it's kind of, you kind of give yourself that power over other people.
Nice. You can subdue through words, or you can liberate through words, right? And what you'll notice is with his answer, it's contradictory. So Socrates is not going to put up with this, right? Well, again, you give me nothing. At the same time, that is revelatory, right? As many of you have pointed out, he's talking about, Gorgias is really talking about the power of persuasion. That's what rhetoric is. That's what he sees the power of rhetoric as, the power of persuasion. If rhetoric involves persuasion, don't other disciplines also persuade? That's Socrates' next question. He says, doesn't math persuade? And this leads to a discussion of what kind of persuasion rhetoric is. And Gorgias says, well, look, the persuasion of rhetoric happens mostly in the law courts concerned with right or wrong. So we all know about lawyers. This seems to cast their net around them, right? Lawyers can persuade a jury to think one way or another. They can persuade a jury to think what is right or wrong. Good. Audrey, you're lit up. Did you want to ask something or say something? Okay. No? No, it's okay.
I didn't think I was lit up.
Don't worry about it. When the screen lights up, sometimes I think people are poised to say something, so just no worries. Socrates has another question. He says, does rhetoric persuade us to believe or to know? What does Gorgias say? Does rhetoric persuade us to believe or to know? Lauren.
That it clearly persuades to believe.
Lauren?
Mostly what Robert said, but also he kind of boils it down to you persuade those who don't have knowledge of what you're talking about, and you don't necessarily have knowledge of it either.
Oh, great. You persuade people to believe, not to know, and then the question becomes, what is the position of the rhetorician, the speaker, between the experts and the non-experts? And should the rhetorician have expertise at all? Good. all these questions come up. Good. Yeah, rhetoric produces belief without knowledge of right and wrong. That is going to be Gorgias' position right now. It makes people accept the expertise of others. Good. And this leads to one of the strangest parts here. They really dive in now. Oh, Cameron.
Oh, I was just gonna say real quick when you're on that point, it fits very well. This reading made me a little bit uncomfy at times because I just couldn't get out of my head the image of like Ben Shapiro coming into the context of all this. Like it fits the definition of all this like too perfectly, especially the part where you said like convincing others without knowing the facts. It's like Fox News. It's just like it's a circle jerk of like Republicans spreading like fake facts, and it just like Ben Shapiro is, I think, like the most modern day interpretation of this.
I saw a lot of reaction when you mentioned his name. Not in a good way. I don't really know Ben Shapiro. My son tells me about him. But I'll tell you what I was thinking of. I was thinking of, at least, in America, we have this problem with expertise right now. And the problem is that we have a lot of people that don't listen to it. And, the question is why? Not only Cameron, you were raising earlier this issue of the face masks. Right. So we have people who doubt the expertise of public health researchers and specialists. But the fires on the West Coast are also raising the specter again of people who doubt the expertise of climate scientists. Right? Go ahead, Cameron.
Hang on, my doorbell just rang. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. It's Ben Shapiro knocking at the door. Okay. So anyway, I'll talk about that expertise in just 1 second, but I want to finish this point here about the expertise. Okay. So he wants to really, Cameron, I put that discussion of expertise on hold for just a second. So let me finish this point with Gorgias, then we can dive in there. So Gorgias, he presses Gorgias. He says, I want to know more about the expertise of rhetoricians themselves and how they compare to expert builders and doctors. See, he's trying to situate rhetoricians and orators between builders and doctors. And what you'll notice that builders, doctors, pretty fucking concrete, right? There's no mystery. Like when you say, you're at a party, what do you do? I'm a builder. Oh, I know what the fuck you do. You build houses. What is your expertise? Carpentry. What do you do? I'm a doctor. Your expertise, human health. When it comes to rhetoricians, it's really, Plato wants to emphasize over and over again how this is so vague, right? And yet Gorgias does not doubt that he is a master expert. In what? Well, Gorgias says on the note of builders and doctors, as well as a matter of fact, rhetoricians advise the builders of the walls of Athens. He mentions too, in particular, this is line 456, just in case I don't know, I didn't look to see if your footnote mentioned it, but 456, oh yes, 455E, he mentions Themistocles and Pericles. Pericles and Themistocles, and I think your footnote says it, they were rhetoricians. So the point is, oh, you think we have no expertise? Actually, we had a say in the construction of the walls of Athens. Well, there you go. So, and then he expands on this in the next passage down below, 456b, and I want to call your attention to this passage. If you have your text with you, take a look at it. He says, Gorgias says, oh yes, Socrates, if only you knew all of it, that is our expertise, that it encompasses. See, our expertise encompasses and subordinates to itself just about everything that can be accomplished. And I'll give you an example proof. Many a time I've gone with my brother or with other doctors to call on some sick person who refuses to take his medicine, or allow the doctor to perform surgery or cauterization on him. And when the doctor failed to persuade him, I succeeded by means of no other craft than oratory. And I mean, too, that if an orator and a doctor came to any city anywhere you like and had to compete in speaking in the assembly, or some other doctor wouldn't make any showing at all, but the one who had the ability to speak would be appointed if he so wished. You get the point. What's their expertise? They help experts. He's the one who persuades people to follow medical advice or building advice, right? What do you think about that? How does that make these rhetoricians sound? Lauren?
It's sort of like Socrates touches on it later, but it almost criminalizes him because he's essentially saying, well, oratory is such a great craft that we can like dupe the doctors and put ourselves where they should be. And it doesn't really inspire a whole lot of nobility. It just seems like almost a trick at times.
Almost a trick. Good. Anybody else? Strange kind of expertise, isn't it? He calls it a competitive art. Gorgias goes on, he says it's a competitive art. Lydia?
Yeah, so I get like a lot of like devil's advocate vibes from this dialogue, which I have known a lot of devil's advocate people in the past / present, and it's a little bit tiring sometimes because and it's always good to think about like other sides and stuff, but you literally be like, hey, the sky is blue, and they'll be like, okay, but like, is it though? Is it really? And then you're like I don't know, it's very I got a lot of that from this, which is like it was kind of funny reading it because I was like, I could like hear like my dad saying something like this, like I could hear me being like, rhetoric is this, and then my dad being like, okay, well, like, is it though? Is it actually though? Like, I think you need to like rethink what you're saying, which is always like good to like rethink your position on things, which is why like philosophy is so important and why everybody, likes it. But it's just very like sometimes it can be a little bit like, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate and just like, I don't know.
Well, if you're like invoking irritation with Socrates, then you're right on. I mean, that's the problem. Like, that's the problem. He's right, and everybody hates him. What do you do when the person who's right is despicable, and unrepentant? But let me hit on this because I think you may also be invoking this issue, Lydia, which is Gorgias is suggesting that the expertise of rhetoricians is that they are the experts who help the experts. Like the example they give is they come in when the doctor cannot persuade a person to take medicine, and they'll come in and they'll persuade it, which suggests they can do what?
Control others to a degree.
Yeah, they could persuade otherwise too, right? So they could make or break said expertise. But I guess the question I have, which is making me, so earlier with Cameron, I was raising the issue of, I'm thinking of the expertise that we're doubting at this moment in America when it comes to public health and also climate change. What is wrong with the experts? Why would the experts need the help of rhetoricians, right? He talks about math being persuasive. Is it? Go ahead, Cameron.
Yeah, again, so it's just like, in my opinion, like what's happening right now is it's like the combination of like the false, like the poor education of Americans, in that like Americans are not properly educated on like how to think and how to think critically. combined with that idea of like the individual in America, which is like breeding like what you said, like everyone not trusting the experts and thinking that they're right, and that like anti-vaxxers, you name it in America right now, like they're thinking that they're the experts because it's the poor education, like poor American education system combined with that sense of individuality that's breeding so much just confusion right now because people refuse to listen to the experts.
Awesome. Lauren.
I think it's also a case of like sort of emotional convincing, I guess you could say, versus rational. Like we were talking about before with the whole like going to war thing, it's a lot easier to convince people using emotional appeals than it is to like throw facts at them, even if the facts are very true.
Mm-hmm.
And if those facts are uncomfortable, then like for instance, a doctor telling the person that Gorgias went to they need to take some sort of medicine that's painful because it's going to help them medically, it's not as convincing as, say, whatever argument that he brought to the table that probably appeals to some sort of emotion. So just expertise not necessarily having an emotional appeal, whereas sort of specifically approaching people to appeal to their emotions is a little bit different.
Good. Kira?
I don't know how to raise hand on Zoom, so I just
It's under participants, but go for it.
I
You have
also
the floor.
experts can be less persuasive because they actually think about what the truth is and they don't want to give any false information, and they stick to what they believe is factual and that is close to the truth. But the orators, the people who persuade, they don't necessarily care about the truth. They just care about the function of making people believe in whatever they say. So I think it's just inevitable that rhetoricians are more persuasive than experts.
Awesome. Thank you. Audra.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say we hit time for people like Cameron who have to leave.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Do your
that's true.
people. I'm gonna tinker on here for a little bit, but that's fine. Robert.
I'm not sure this is a valid point, but I think about like credibility. It's very hard in those times to prove that you are a credible source, that you actually are an expert, because like it's hard to verify.
Excellent, Robert. Someone has to verify you, right? Audra.
I was just gonna say, and I don't know if this is more like a modern American thing, because I have to deal with this with my grandmother all the time, who's like, oh, those the scientists or whatever, they're just being paid to say that. Like their opinion is being bought. They don't actually base it on real facts. So it does kind of go into what Robert was saying, where like there's no one to really prove them credible, because they are the experts on that sort of thing. There's no real higher authority. But to go back to like why the orators are kind of persuasive, it's almost like they're like a second opinion, or not somebody who's trying to quote unquote sell you a product. They can come at it and be like, oh, I'm just a guy, I'm kind of a friend who's good at speaking, and I can come in and kind of be like, well, there's all these benefits and this and that, and kind of convince them, instead of being like, I'm a doctor who is trying to, sell you medicine, and I don't know how applicable that is in ancient Athens, but it's like the how do I say it? Like I'll type it in the text. I don't know how to put it in words yet, but if I figure it out, I'll put it in the chat.
You mean?
Catch-all, maybe?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I said it could be like a catch-all, maybe.
Okay. Sid?
Yeah, I was like, there was this video I was watching that was talking about how, like, why anti-masking is a thing. And they basically emphasized that after the H1N1 virus, they wrote like an entire book basically saying how to deal with the virus later. And that one of the most important aspects of that is to have a spokesperson who isn't tied to like either political party or any political party. And one of the main reasons why we're having a lot of issues in America today is because Trump is trying to interfere with, or not interfere, but he's trying to take over the conversation when we need to have like an entirely separate neutral person discussing things like medicine, so it's not perceived as pro this ideology or pro that ideology.
Good. Yeah, I mean, Plato is raising a very important political and philosophical question here, which is, what is the power of expertise itself? And I think, I could problematize this for you and maybe get you to appreciate this question better if I were to ask you this question. How do you know when a doctor is wrong? Because I can tell you, I have no fucking idea.
I think that when it comes to things like medical apartheid, you know what I'm trying to say? Doctors are wrong then. Doctors are wrong in medical racism and medical gaslighting.
I meant like in, thank you, Vivian. I meant like if they were issuing you your own diagnosis, like, how do you know to question? Like, I don't think that prescription is right. I think I need X. Or, are you sure you saw a tumor? You're totally right, Vivian. But I'm thinking more in terms of like, if you're at the receiving end of an expert diagnosis.
I can also speak to that as someone with a chronic illness, in that, like, I do think that there are certain, like, when it relates back to bringing it back to philosophy, like, it is kind of an ethics question maybe, but I truly intrinsically think that, like, medical ethics have a long way to go, and that's intrinsically tied to incorrect diagnoses. And when I talk about medical gaslighting, I think that's also intrinsically linked to like prejudice and can lead to false diagnoses. And yeah, eugenics, like when I'm like, not to be like all social justice-y, like, because I'm trying to relate it back to philosophy, but like when a trans person isn't getting correct treatment or getting treatment because their medical provider claims religious beliefs, that's not ethical, obviously. And like, I think that, yeah, medical neglect and how that relates back to Gorgias is like the kind of rhetoric that we like spew and just like surround ourselves with can influence that behavior. I don't know if that made sense, but like as someone chronically ill, I can see the connections between those things.
Good. Vivian, in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it on to Robert and Henry, and then I'm going to make some comments and tie this all together. So thank you.
I think even on like a much surface level and where Vivian was going, you will never know, because science is our way of understanding the world, but at no point in history will it ever be fully correct. It will always have some sort of error that we cannot prove, or some sort of theory that is objectively incorrect because of some aspect we haven't thought of yet. Science likes to pretend that it's scientific, like it's very black and white, but it's not. it's
Good.
mostly just guesses and theories based on what we do now.
Awesome. Henry.
In the topic of like doctors being wrong, and a personal thing that has happened to me when I got my concussion when I was younger, the hospital read my CAT scan wrong and said that I had swelling under the skull. And they were quick to send me to Hershey because in the sense of they didn't want whatever I had to be on their name.
Yeah.
So they were quick to send me to someone else. Luckily, it was just the CAT scan. It was not the CAT scan. It was just my goose egg coming up. But either way, we don't go to the hospital anymore. Ours is
Well,
bad.
let me point something out to you that we don't really admit in English. Cameron, you said your mother is from Holland, and in Dutch, medicine is called geneeskunde. And what geneeskunde means is an art of healing. Medicine is not a science. Medicine is an art. So it's a little tricky of Plato to be throwing that in here. He recognized it as an art. Mathematics is recognized as more of a science. And the question is, and I realize we're coming to an end here, so I'm gonna make a few comments and then tie this up with a bow, and we'll start with Polus next week in Callicles, the rest of the Gorgias. But the problem he's arguing is that expertise of itself does not necessarily persuade. Science, this was Robert's very interesting point. Science thinks, or sometimes I should say, suggests, not thinks. Science suggests that it is objective, and as objective, it is inherently persuasive, and that is not the case, right? It takes someone to interpret the findings of scientists to tell us what the meanings are. In other words, there's ample room for persuasion to step in, right? Climate science is useless without the persuaders. Public health is useless without the persuaders. But that means that they are then at the mercy of those persuaders. So really what is at issue is the persuaders themselves. Gorgias has revealed that the persuaders are amoral. That's A with a, as in they don't have any morality, right? They have no moral compass of their own. And Socrates is going to push hard against that. But what he's problematized is this whole idea that the experts need some kind of expert assistance in order to have their case made. Now, regarding what Vivian was saying, the ethical lapses of the medical field have been documented and they're ongoing. I was thinking more like when you're in a doctor's office and the doctor gives you a diagnosis, how do you know at the moment, like, I think you're wrong or right? You know, unless you have a medical degree as well, it's kind of hard, you know. And the tale that Henry told sounds like this is something that I'm guessing, Henry, you can just nod or shake your head. I'm guessing you didn't know immediately, like they're wrong, right? It comes into play afterwards when you figure things out, you know? So any case, that's all I want to say at this point. We're just about at the point in the dialogue where Polus comes in. So I think this is probably a good place to pause. And thanks really a lot for all your comments. This was really good and a pretty passionate discussion, and the chat is getting pretty passionate too. So that's good. Can't really follow everything here, and I'm not sure I can translate anything, but I'm going to phase out here. So you guys can all, you know, go ahead and do your thing and enjoy this day wherever you are. And you know your assignment for next week. I would like you to read the rest of the Gorgias and answer the reading responses. Next week, I'll go over the paper topics, which are due the week after. And we have a lot to discuss next week. And if there's anybody has any questions about anything that came up today or wants to continue the conversation, I'm sticking around right now, okay? So that was real great today. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. I'll stick around, okay?
Thanks, everybody.
Hello.
I emailed documentation. I had like a scare. It's just strep, but I thought it was COVID and freaked out.
Oh.
Dealing with stuff. But I emailed the documentation to you and I did the reading. So.
Yeah, you missed my message at the beginning of class. If or when you come late, just let me know.
Yeah.
And I will mark you off. And I'm going to do that right now. Were you absent last week completely?
No, I was just late to this class.
That's cool.
I was there last week.
All right. Well, like I said, I record these sessions so you can get caught up any way you need to.
All right, I'll look at it. Okay.
And is there anything else?
This might be okay. Actually, this is just a side note. I don't know. It's just a fun fact. My grandpa actually was a philosophy professor at Gallaudet. Do you know that university?
I know Gallaudet, sure, in Washington.
30 years. So he taught philosophy to deaf kids. So I don't know, fun fact, but he has like a few published stuff. But I've been talking to him a lot about this stuff and like relativism and just random philosophical concepts. But yeah, I'll just catch up. But
continue the conversation with him. That would be great.
Okay, thank you.
You can have him log in and listen in anytime now that we're remote, right?
He's like very into philosophy. Like he reads Plato for breakfast and like all day, like reads the classics. So I don't know, maybe he'd be a guest speaker or something.
If he joins in, I won't curse and I'll hide the chat.
He just turned 96 actually, so this would be a like
wow.